Okay, I've cleared the board and set up this position to talk about checkmate, and stalemate. Now, when I was discussing the movement of the king, I said it can move in any direction one square. We also discussed that a piece cannot move to a square where it's already occupied by one of its own pieces, or meaning you can't have two white pieces on the same square. Now the other rule with the king is, the other rule with the king is you can't move to a square where it could be captured. So let's look at the white king and see the squares that it cannot move to. It cannot move to these two squares because they're already occupied by a white piece. Likewise, it can't move to this square, this white square, or else it would be captured by this black bishop, because this black bishop in one move could come down here and capture the king. And the king cannot move to a square where it could be captured. So it cannot move here. And now another square it cannot move to is this square here, this black square, which I'll highlight. Why? Well, it wouldn't be captured by the bishop, but it would be captured by this black rook could come down and capture the king. So the king cannot move to any of these squares. These two squares right here that I'm hovering over, because it would be in check or would be captured by a black piece, and that's called moving into check, and that's not allowed. Now the white king can move over to this square over here. Okay? So that is some of the principles of check. Let's just look at the black king for some more examples. So where can the black king move and where can it not move? Well, we know the black king cannot move here. Whoops, I meant to highlight it red, because it's already occupied by a black piece. Now, can the black king move to this black square that I'm hovering over? The answer is no, because the white queen could capture it. Likewise, the black king cannot move here because the queen could capture it. And also the black king cannot move here because the queen could capture it. So the black king is not allowed. Once again, used highlighting with the wrong color. The black king cannot move to any of these three squares because it would be moving onto a square where it could be captured by a white piece. Now the black king could move to here because a white piece cannot move to this square. Okay? So that's sort of the rules, some additional rules of the king. It cannot be moved to a place where it can be captured. Now, what is check? Check is where your opponent is threatening to capture your king on the next move. So, and what is checkmate? Well, checkmate is where your opponent moves to capture your king on the next move, and you can't get your king out of check no matter what you do. So let's take an example. And if you don't know, there's only three ways for a king to get out of check. Once your opponent threatens to capture your king, there's only three ways to get out of it. And you should memorize these, or always keep these in mind as options. I call it one, you can run. Running is just basically moving your king. You can block, meaning you can put a piece in between the king and the piece that wants to capture it. Or you can capture the piece that's threatening to take your king on the next move. Okay? Now, in this position, if black were to move first, there's actually a one-move checkmate. So let's look at these. Let's say the rook can move all the way down to here. And this is actually checkmate. Why? Well, let's look at it. Now notice on the next move, the black rook is threatening to take my king. And this means I must stop everything. So once your opponent threatens to capture your king, you must basically drop everything and make sure your king is safe. So let's look at the three options. Can the black king move? Well, no. It cannot move to these two squares because there's already a white piece. It can't move to this square because it would be captured by the black rook on the next move. It can't move to this square. Likewise, the black rook would capture it on the next move. And it can't move, or it can't capture. Now remember I said run, and we tried running to these four squares, but it doesn't work. We can't block because there's no square in between the king and the rook. Now can we capture the rook? The answer is no, because if we did, the black bishop would capture the king. This position is actually checkmate, and the game is over. Black has won. So let's back up a step, and let's see if it was white's turn. What would happen? Okay. Okay. Let's say the white queen decided to move to this square down here. Whoops. Here. Now remember, just we're saying it was white's turn. Last time I said it was black's turn to move. We're just using examples here. But let's say in the original position was white's turn to move, and the white queen moved to here, giving the king check, because now the queen is threatening to capture the king on the next move. Is this checkmate? Is this check? What can the king do? Well, let's see. Well, the king is in check, so now it must do one of the three things. It must run, block, or capture. Can the king run? So let's look at the squares the king could possibly go to. Could it go to? It has to go to an empty square. Now just remember, it can't move to this square because it's already occupied by a black pawn. Can it run to this square? No, because it could be captured by either the queen or the rook. Could it move to this square? No, because it would be captured by the queen. Can it move to this white square? The answer is yes, because there's no white piece that can capture it. So actually this position is not checkmate. The king can at least run to this square. Now the question is, can you block? Well, no, there's no square between the queen and the king, so that it's impossible to block. Just for note, it's actually also impossible to block, or so chess usually refers to as interpose, when you're being checked by a knight, because the knight jumps. Just for a comment. Now, can we capture the queen? Can the king capture the queen? No, because the rook would then capture the king. So actually the only move in this position is for the king to move to this square. Okay? So now let's cover stalemate. Okay, I've set up a new position on the board. And basically, what is stalemate? Well, in chess, you're obligated to make sure your opponent has a move to make. So stalemate is basically saying it's your opponent's turn to move, but he has no legal move to make. Okay? In this case, stalemate is a draw. So if you stalemate your opponent, instead of usually getting a win, you get a draw. So let's say it was black's turn to move. Now let's look at this. Can the king move? The answer is no, because if it moved to any of these squares, it would be captured immediately by the queen. Okay? So the king cannot move. Now, can this pawn over here move? The answer is yes. Okay? So this position is not stalemate because the black can actually move its pawn, and let's move the pawn. Now let's say white did a very foolish move in this position, because white can easily win this game. But let's say white made a very foolish mistake and moved this white pawn. Now, this position is stalemate. Why? Because, as was said before, the black king cannot move, and he has no other legal move. He can't move the pawn. So, black cannot move. This is stalemate, and it's a draw. So white went from a clear win to a draw.